I should have known something was wrong when Serena spent 3 hours getting ready for Richard's Halloween party. 3 hours to become Catwoman, complete with leather that probably cost more than my monthly restaurant manager salary. She stood before our bedroom mirror, adjusting the mask that covered half her face, leaving only her crimson lips visible. "You look incredible," I said, tugging at my hastily assembled pirate costume. The plastic sword felt ridiculous against my hip, but Serena had insisted we coordinate our outfits somehow. "Pirates and cats," she'd said with that laugh that used to make my chest tighten with affection. Now it just sounded hollow. "Thanks, Danny." She didn't turn around, too busy applying another coat of lipstick. "Patricia's wearing the same costume tonight. We planned it as twins." Patricia Thornton, Serena's best friend since college, a real estate agent with perfectly manicured nails and a husband who worked construction. Marcus Thornton was built like a linebacker and had the personality of one too, all swagger and crude jokes that made the other wives giggle nervously at barbecues. "Should be interesting," I muttered, checking my phone. "Richard wants us there by 8. Traffic's going to be terrible with all the trick-or-treaters." Serena finally turned, and I caught my breath despite everything. Even after 12 years of marriage, she could still stop me cold. The black leather hugged every curve, the cat ears perched perfectly on her blonde hair, but something in her green eyes looked distant, calculating. "We need to talk about Miami," she said suddenly. My stomach dropped. "What about Miami?" "The girls' weekend next month. Patricia and I booked the flights yesterday." She walked past me toward the dresser, her heels clicking on the hardwood. "I know you'll probably have some opinion about it." "Opinion?" I kept my voice level, though warning bells were already ringing in my head. "Why would I have an opinion about you visiting your sister?" "Because you always do." She grabbed her purse, checking her reflection one more time. "You get that look whenever I want to do something without you, that controlling husband look." The accusation hit like a slap. Controlling? I worked 60 hours a week managing Riverside Grill, came home exhausted most nights, and rarely questioned her plans. When had wanting to spend time with my wife become controlling? "I've never tried to control you, Serena." "Haven't you?" She turned, and for a moment her mask slipped. Not the leather one, but the pretense of casual conversation. "Every time I mention girls' night, you ask 20 questions. Every time I want to take a weekend trip, you find some reason why it's inconvenient." I stared at her, genuinely confused. "I ask questions because I care. And when have I ever stopped you from doing anything?" "It's not about stopping me, Danny. It's about making me feel guilty for wanting a life outside this house." She gestured around our bedroom, which suddenly felt smaller, more suffocating. "Patricia and I need this trip. We've been planning it for months." Months? This was the first I'd heard of any Miami trip, but arguing would only prove her point about being controlling, wouldn't it? That's how these conversations always went. I'd express concern, she'd accuse me of being possessive, and somehow I'd end up apologizing for caring about my wife's safety. "When?" I asked. "Third weekend in November, Friday through Sunday." She was already walking toward the door. "And before you ask, we're staying at the Fontainebleau. Patricia found a great deal online." The Fontainebleau. I'd seen their commercials, beautiful people lounging by infinity pools, couples sharing intimate dinners overlooking the ocean. Not exactly the kind of place I'd picture for a sister's weekend, but what did I know about women's trips? "Sounds expensive," I said, following her downstairs. "We can afford it. Besides, when's the last time I bought anything for myself?" Another accusation disguised as a question. "You spend more on restaurant equipment in a month than I spend on clothes in a year." That wasn't true, but I'd learned not to argue with Serena's version of our finances. She had a gift for rewriting history to support whatever narrative suited her current needs. We drove to Richard's house in relative silence, the radio playing some generic pop song that filled the space between us. I found myself studying Serena's profile in the dashboard light, wondering when she'd become a stranger. The woman I'd married had been warm, spontaneous, full of laughter that felt genuine. This version of my wife spoke in carefully constructed sentences, each word chosen for maximum impact. Richard's neighborhood was alive with Halloween chaos. Kids in costumes racing between houses, parents trailing behind with flashlights and candy bags. Jack-o'-lanterns grinned from every porch, their candles flickering in the October wind. "There's Patricia's car," Serena said, pointing to a red SUV parked across the street. "She beat us here." I pulled into Richard's driveway behind a line of cars I recognized from previous parties. Our social circle had shrunk over the years to maybe a dozen couples, all of us approaching 40 and pretending we still enjoyed theme parties and group costume contests. Richard answered the door dressed as a vampire, complete with plastic fangs that made him lisp. "Danny, Serena, you both look fantastic. Come in, come in. The party's just getting started." The house was already crowded, music pumping from speakers hidden throughout the main floor. I recognized most of the faces behind their masks and makeup. Neighbors, co-workers, friends from our college days who'd somehow ended up in the same suburban purgatory. "Bar's in the kitchen," Richard said, slapping my shoulder. "Jenny made her famous punch. Fair warning, it's stronger than it tastes." I was heading toward the kitchen when I spotted Patricia. She was indeed wearing an identical Catwoman costume, standing near the fireplace with a group of women I didn't recognize. But it wasn't Patricia that made me stop cold. It was Marcus Thornton, dressed as Tarzan in what amounted to a leather loincloth and not much else. He was talking to Serena, standing closer than necessary, his hand resting on the small of her back. I watched my wife throw her head back and laugh at something he said. A real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard from her in months. The kind that used to be reserved for me. "Quite a view, isn't it?" I turned to find Jenny Martinez, Richard's wife, dressed as a witch with a knowing smile. She was holding 2 drinks, offering one to me. "What do you mean?" I asked, accepting the cup. "Oh, nothing specific. Just interesting to watch people when they think nobody's paying attention." She took a sip of her punch, never taking her eyes off the scene by the fireplace. Costumes have a way of bringing out people's true selves, don't you think? I looked back at Serena and Marcus. As I watched, he leaned down to whisper something in her ear. She giggled, actually giggled, like a teenager with a crush. "How long have they been talking?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Since Patricia and Serena arrived, about 20 minutes ago." Jenny's witch hat bobbed as she nodded toward the group. "Patricia's been circulating, but Serena, well, she seems to have found her conversation partner for the evening." The punch tasted like fruit juice with a gasoline chaser, but I drained half the cup anyway. Liquid courage, or liquid stupidity. Sometimes there wasn't much difference. "I should go say hello," I said. "Should you?" Jenny raised an eyebrow. "Or should you observe a little longer? Sometimes we learn more by watching than by interrupting." Her words carried a weight that made me reconsider. Jenny had always been perceptive, the kind of woman who noticed things others missed. If she was suggesting I pay attention, maybe I should. I found a spot near the kitchen doorway where I could watch without being obvious. The party swirled around me, couples dancing badly to 80s music, groups of friends sharing inside jokes, the usual suburban theater that passed for social interaction. But my focus remained on Serena and Marcus. They'd moved slightly away from the main group, positioning themselves in an alcove near the sliding glass doors. From this angle, I could see their body language more clearly. Marcus was doing most of the talking, gesturing with his hands as he told some story. But it was the way Serena was listening that bothered me, leaning forward, touching his arm when she laughed, playing with her hair in that unconscious way she used to do during our early dating days. Earth to Danny. I jerked back to reality to find Richard standing beside me, vampire fangs making his grin look predatory. Sorry, just people watching, I said. I noticed. You've been staring at your wife and Marcus for the past 10 minutes. Richard followed my gaze. Everything okay at home? The question hung in the air between us. Richard and I had been friends since college, close enough that he'd been my best man. But marriage had a way of creating distance between male friendships, too many shared confidences that turned awkward when relationships got complicated. Everything's fine, I said automatically. Is it? Richard's expression grew serious despite the ridiculous costume. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like your wife's having a pretty intense conversation with another man while you're hiding in my kitchen. He wasn't wrong. But what was the alternative? Storm over there like some jealous caveman and demand to know what they were discussing. Serena would crucify me for that kind of behavior, especially after her earlier comments about being controlling. They're just talking, I said. Maybe, but talking can be dangerous, Danny. Sometimes more dangerous than anything physical. Richard lowered his voice. Jenny mentioned some things, rumors, about Marcus and some of the other wives. My chest tightened. What kind of rumors? The kind that are probably none of my business. But you're my friend, so I'm making it my business. Richard glanced around to make sure we weren't being overheard. Marcus has been showing up at the gym a lot lately, same time as some of the women from our group, including Serena. The punch turned to acid in my stomach. Since when? Past couple months. Jenny noticed because she goes to the same place, says they always seem to be working out together, spotting each other, that kind of thing. Richard paused. Look, it's probably nothing, but you know how people talk. I did know. Our suburban community thrived on gossip, speculation, and the slow-motion drama of other people's relationships. But knowing that didn't make Richard's words any less disturbing. Has anyone said anything specific? I asked. Just that they seem friendly. More friendly than you'd expect between a married woman and her friend's husband. Richard shrugged. Could be completely innocent. Could be something else. I figured you should know. I looked back toward the alcove, but Serena and Marcus had moved. I scanned the room until I spotted them near the bar, now joined by Patricia and another couple I didn't recognize. The moment had passed, the conversation had shifted, but the unease in my gut remained. Thanks for telling me, I said. That's what friends are for. Just be careful, okay? If there's something going on, you want to handle it smart, not emotional. Richard's advice echoed in my head as I made my way through the party, greeting people I'd known for years but suddenly felt disconnected from. Everyone seemed to be playing roles, the happy couples, the successful professionals, the satisfied suburbanites living their dream lives. But underneath the costumes and small talk, I sensed currents of discontent, secrets, relationships held together by habit rather than happiness. When had we all become so good at pretending? I finally approached the group at the bar, slipping into the conversation as naturally as possible. Serena looked up when I appeared, her smile bright but somehow forced. There you are, she said, reaching for my hand. I was just telling everyone about our Miami trip. Our trip? I glanced at Patricia, who was stirring her drink with unusual intensity. Sounds like fun, said the woman I didn't recognize. The Fontainebleau is supposed to be amazing. Have you been there before? I asked, directing the question to both Serena and Patricia. No, but we've done our research, Patricia said quickly. The reviews are incredible. Perfect for a girls' weekend. Marcus was standing slightly behind the group, and I caught him watching Serena with an expression I couldn't quite read. When he noticed me looking, he stepped forward with that aggressive friendliness that had always rubbed me the wrong way. Danny, great costume, man. Very authentic pirate vibe. He gestured at my plastic sword. You ready to defend your treasure? The comment felt loaded, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly why. Always, I said, matching his grin with one of my own. That's what I like to hear. A man who protects what's his. Marcus raised his drink in a mock toast. To loyal husbands and faithful wives. The words hung in the air like a challenge. I studied his face, looking for signs of sarcasm or hidden meaning, but Marcus had always been hard to read. Was he mocking me? Testing me? Or just making conversation with his usual lack of social awareness? To loyalty, I agreed, raising my cup. We drank, and I tasted something bitter that had nothing to do with Jenny's punch. The party continued around us, but something had shifted. Maybe it was Richard's warning, or Marcus's toast, or just the way Serena kept avoiding eye contact. Whatever it was, I felt like I was watching everything through a distorted lens, seeing familiar people and situations from a new, unsettling angle. "I need some air," Serena announced suddenly. "This crowd is making me claustrophobic." "I'll come with you," I offered. "No, that's okay. Patricia and I will just step outside for a minute. Girl talk, you know?" She was already moving toward the patio doors, Patricia trailing behind her. I watched them disappear into Richard's backyard, leaving me standing with Marcus and the couple I'd just met, Tom and Lisa something, neighbors from 3 blocks over who seemed nice enough but had nothing interesting to say. "So, Danny, how's the restaurant business?" Tom asked, clearly trying to fill the conversational void. "Busy. Always busy." I kept one eye on the patio doors, waiting for Serena to return. "People have to eat, recession or not." "That's smart, being in an essential business," Lisa chimed in. "Tom's in real estate, so when the market fluctuates—" She continued talking, but I'd stopped listening. Through the glass doors, I could see Serena and Patricia standing near Richard's pool, their heads close together in intense conversation. Even from this distance, their body language suggested this wasn't casual girl talk. "Excuse me," I said, interrupting Lisa mid-sentence. "I'm going to grab another drink." I made my way toward the kitchen, but instead of stopping at the bar, I continued to the sliding doors. They were slightly open, and voices carried clearly in the cool October air. "Can't keep doing this," Patricia was saying. "It's too risky." "I know, but what choice do I have?" Serena's voice was strained, desperate in a way I'd never heard before. "Danny's starting to notice things. He asked about the gym yesterday." My heart hammered against my ribs. I pressed closer to the door, staying hidden behind the curtain. "Maybe you should cool it for a while," Patricia suggested. "Take a break until things settle down." "A break?" Serena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You don't understand. I can't take a break. Not now." "Why not?" There was a long pause. When Serena spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I think I'm falling in love with him." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the door frame to steady myself, my mind reeling. Falling in love with who? Marcus? The construction worker with the wandering hands and the crude sense of humor? "Serena, no." Patricia's voice was sharp with alarm. "You can't. This was supposed to be just what? Just fun? Just scratching an itch?" Serena's tone turned bitter. "Well, it's not just anything anymore. It's real." "It's not real. It's fantasy. It's the excitement of doing something forbidden." Patricia moved closer to her friend, and I could see her gesturing emphatically. "You have a good life, Serena. A husband who loves you, financial security, a beautiful home. Don't throw that away for some temporary infatuation." "Good life?" Serena's laugh was sharp, cruel. "Danny and I are like roommates. We barely talk anymore unless it's about bills or schedules. When's the last time he surprised me with anything? When's the last time he made me feel desired instead of just convenient?" Each word was a knife twist. Was that really how she saw our marriage? As convenient arrangement between roommates? "So you're going to destroy everything for Marcus Thornton?" Patricia's voice rose slightly. "A man who's cheated on his own wife multiple times? A man who treats women like disposable entertainment? He doesn't treat me that way. doesn't he? What exactly has he promised you, Serena? Marriage? A future together? Or just more hotel rooms and secret meetings? Hotel rooms. The phrase echoed in my head, connecting dots I hadn't even realized existed. The Miami trip, the Fontainebleau, the girls' weekend that had materialized out of nowhere. Miami isn't about Patricia and me, is it? I whispered to myself. As if summoned by my realization, Marcus appeared in the backyard, walking toward the two women with the confident stride of a man who owned whatever space he occupied. Even in his ridiculous Tarzan costume, he commanded attention. "Ladies," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the yard. "Having a private conference?" "We were just getting some air," Patricia said quickly. "The party's getting a little overwhelming." "I know the feeling." Marcus moved to stand next to Serena, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Sometimes you need to escape the crowd, find some privacy." The way he said the word made my skin crawl. I watched as Serena looked up at him, her expression soft and vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen in years. The way she used to look at me. "We should go back inside," Patricia said, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "People will start to wonder where we are." "Let them wonder," Marcus said. "Since when do we care what people think?" "We." The casual use of the plural pronoun hit me like another punch to the gut. How long had they been a we? How long had I been the clueless husband, working late while my wife built a new life with another man? "Marcus, please," Serena said, but her protest sounded half-hearted. "Not here, not now." "When then? We've been playing this game for months." His voice dropped to a register that was clearly meant to be seductive. "I'm tired of pretending, tired of stolen moments and secret messages." Months. They'd been doing this for months while I'd been obliviously managing my restaurant, coming home exhausted, grateful that Serena seemed to have found new interests that made her happy. "What are you suggesting?" Patricia asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. "I'm suggesting we stop pretending this is just a fling." Marcus turned to face Serena fully. "I'm suggesting we figure out what we really want and go after it." "And what about Danny?" Serena's voice was small, uncertain. "What about your wife?" "What about them?" Marcus shrugged with casual cruelty. "They'll survive. People get divorced every day. It's not the end of the world." Not the end of the world. My 12-year marriage, the life we'd built together, the future I'd imagined. None of it mattered to this man who was systematically dismantling everything I cared about. "I need time to think," Serena said. "You've had time. We've been thinking for months." Marcus reached out to touch her face, and she didn't pull away. Miami could be our chance to figure this out, away from all the complications, all the guilt, just us. Miami. Of course. The girls' weekend that wasn't a girls' weekend at all. The Fontainebleau reservation that was probably under Marcus's name, not Patricia's. The elaborate deception that had been planned for months while I'd been working to pay for the life my wife was preparing to abandon. "I should go," Patricia said, backing away from the conversation. "This is between you two." She turned toward the house, and I quickly stepped away from the door, making it to the kitchen bar just as she came inside. Her face was pale beneath her Catwoman mask, her hands shaking slightly as she reached for a drink. "Patricia," I said, stepping up beside her. "Everything okay?" She startled, nearly dropping her cup. "Danny, I didn't see you there." "Just getting a refill." I held up my empty cup, studying her expression. "You look upset. Problems with the party?" "No, no problems, just, you know how it is. Sometimes you need a break from all the noise." She was talking too fast, her words tumbling over each other. "Serena's still outside if you're looking for her." "Actually, I was hoping to talk to you about something." I kept my voice casual, conversational. "Serena mentioned you two are planning a Miami trip." Patricia's face went through a series of micro-expressions: surprise, fear, calculation, before settling on a forced smile. Yes, we're really excited about it. Girl time, you know? Spa treatments, shopping, maybe some beach time if the weather's nice. Sounds expensive. The Fontainebleau isn't exactly budget-friendly. We've been saving up for it. Sometimes you have to splurge on yourself, right? She was gripping her drink so tightly her knuckles were white. Serena deserves a break. She's been working so hard lately. Working hard at what? Serena hadn't held a regular job in 3 years. Not since the marketing firm where she'd worked part-time had downsized. Her days were filled with gym sessions, lunch dates, and what she called personal projects that never seemed to produce any tangible results. When did you book the hotel? I asked. A few weeks ago? Maybe a month? Patricia's eyes darted toward the patio doors. I should probably check on Serena. She's been out there a while. I'm sure she's fine. Probably just needed some air. I paused, watching Patricia's reaction carefully. You know, it's funny. When Serena first mentioned the trip tonight, she said you'd found a great deal online. But now you're saying you've been planning it for months. Which is it? The question hung between us like a trap. Patricia opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. Well, we'd been talking about it for months, but we just recently found the right deal. You know how these things work. You plan and plan, then suddenly the perfect opportunity presents itself. It was a reasonable explanation, but her delivery was all wrong. Too rehearsed, too careful, like someone who'd practiced the lie but hadn't quite perfected it. Makes sense, I said, letting her off the hook. I hope you both have a great time. Relief flooded her features. Thank you. I'm sure we will. She hurried away, leaving me alone at the bar with my thoughts spinning like a tornado. Everything I'd believed about my life, my marriage, my future. It was all built on lies. Serena wasn't just having an affair. She was planning to leave me. The Miami trip was their trial run, their chance to play house while I sat at home like an idiot, probably worried about her safety. The sliding door opened, and Serena walked back into the house, followed closely by Marcus. They'd composed themselves, putting on masks of casual friendship, but I could see the tension in their body language, the way they carefully avoided touching, the way they looked everywhere except at each other. There you are, Serena said, approaching me with a smile that felt like a performance. I was looking for you. I've been here the whole time, I said. Getting acquainted with Tom and Lisa. Nice people. Yes, they seem lovely. She moved to stand beside me, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something new, something I didn't recognize. Are you having fun? Fun. Was I having fun watching my marriage disintegrate in real time? Was I enjoying the discovery that my wife was planning to abandon me for a man who treated women like recreational equipment? It's been educational, I said. Something in my tone must have alerted her because her smile faltered slightly. What do you mean? Just interesting to observe people at parties. You see different sides of them when they think nobody's watching. Her green eyes searched my face, looking for signs of what I knew. I kept my expression neutral, giving her nothing to work with. I suppose that's true, she said carefully. People do tend to relax their guard at social events. Exactly. They say things they might not say otherwise. Do things they might not do otherwise. I took a sip of my punch, never breaking eye contact. It's fascinating, really. The psychology of it all. Danny, are you feeling all right? You're acting strange. Strange how? I don't know. Different. Like you're analyzing everything instead of just enjoying the party. She was right, of course. I was analyzing everything, every word, every gesture, every micro-expression, because I'd learned that my wife was a stranger and strangers required careful study. Maybe I'm just tired, I said. It's been a long week at the restaurant. You work too much. The concern in her voice sounded genuine, which made everything worse. How could she stand there expressing worry about my well-being while planning to destroy my life? Someone has to pay the bills. I know, and I appreciate everything you do. I really do. She reached out to touch my arm, and I had to resist the urge to pull away. That's why this Miami trip is so important to me. I feel like I've been stuck in a rut lately, and I need something to look forward to. A rut. That's how she described our marriage. A rut she needed to escape with another man. When do you leave? I asked. November 15th. We'll fly back on the 17th. The dates rolled off her tongue easily, probably because she'd been thinking about them constantly. It's just 3 days, but I think it'll be good for me. Good for us, really. Sometimes a little distance helps you appreciate what you have. The irony was staggering. She was planning to use our marriage as a launching pad for her new relationship, then return home refreshed and grateful for the life she was preparing to abandon. I'm sure it will be, I said. The party continued around us, but I felt disconnected from it all. People laughed and danced and made small talk, living their normal lives while mine crumbled in slow motion. I went through the motions, shaking hands, making conversation, pretending to enjoy myself, but inside I was calculating. What did I know for certain? Serena was having an affair with Marcus Thornton. They'd been involved for months. They were planning to spend a weekend together in Miami, using Patricia as cover and my money to fund their romantic getaway. And based on what I'd overheard, Serena was considering leaving me for him. What I didn't know was how far things had progressed, how many people knew about it, and what my options were for dealing with the situation. The smart thing would be to confront her immediately, lay out what I'd discovered and demand an explanation. But something held me back. Maybe pride, maybe strategy, maybe just the hope that I'd misunderstood something fundamental. Or maybe I was just a coward who preferred the illusion of ignorance to the reality of betrayal. I'm going to find the bathroom, I told Serena. Okay, I'll be here. I made my way upstairs, needing space to think. Richard's guest bathroom was empty, and I locked the door behind me, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The pirate costume looked ridiculous now, a grown man playing dress-up while his real life fell apart. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a wild moment, I thought it might be Serena, maybe coming clean about everything. But it was just a notification from my restaurant's security system. Everything normal, everything secure. If only the same could be said for my marriage. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to clear my head. What was my next move? Confrontation felt premature without more evidence, but surveillance felt pathetic, like something a private investigator would do in a bad movie. Then again, maybe that's what this situation called for. Maybe I needed to stop thinking like a trusting husband and start thinking like someone whose life was under attack. I pulled out my phone and opened our shared cellular account. Serena and I had been on the same plan for years, which meant I had access to all the usage details, call logs, text records, data usage. It was all there if I knew where to look. The recent calls showed the usual pattern: conversations with her sister, her mother, Patricia, a few numbers I didn't recognize. But the text messages were more revealing. Dozens of exchanges with a number that wasn't in her contacts, sent and received at all hours of the day and night. I copied the number and ran it through a reverse lookup service. Marcus Thornton's cell phone. The messages themselves were encrypted by the carrier, but the frequency and timing told their own story. Texts sent while I was at work, late-night exchanges that continued until the early morning hours, constant communication that spoke of obsession rather than casual friendship. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through weeks of data, watching the digital evidence of my wife's betrayal unfold in real time. The affair wasn't just emotional. It was consuming her life, becoming the central focus of her existence while I remained obliviously on the periphery. A knock on the bathroom door interrupted my investigation. "Danny? You okay in there?" Richard's voice, concerned but not urgent. "Fine," I called back. "Just needed a minute." "Take your time." But you might want to come downstairs soon. The costume contest is starting, and Serena's looking for you. Of course she was. Had to maintain appearances, play the role of the loving wife for the crowd. I wondered if she'd practiced her performance, rehearsed the right balance of affection and normalcy that would keep people from asking questions. "I'll be right down," I said. I put my phone away and straightened my costume, preparing to rejoin the theater downstairs. But something had changed in those few minutes of solitude. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder and more focused. Anger, maybe, or determination, or just the survival instinct of a man who'd realized he was fighting for his life. Whatever it was, I felt more clear-headed than I had all evening. The situation was bad, but it wasn't hopeless. I had information now, and information was power. The question was how to use it. The costume contest was exactly the kind of suburban pageantry I'd learned to endure over the years. Couples posed and preened while Richard played master of ceremonies, his vampire fangs making every announcement sound like a lisp-heavy comedy routine. Serena and I stood with the other married pairs, her hand in mine, both of us smiling for the cameras that captured our performance of marital bliss. "Best couple costume goes to..." Richard paused for dramatic effect, scanning the room full of expectant faces. "The twin Catwomen and their respective partners." Serena squeezed my hand as applause erupted around us. Patricia and Marcus stepped forward to join us, and I found myself standing next to the man who was systematically destroying my life, all of us grinning for photos like some twisted double date. "Congratulations," Marcus said, extending his hand to me. "May the best man win." The words could have been innocent, just standard competitive banter between friends, but something in his eyes suggested a deeper meaning, a private joke I wasn't supposed to understand. "Thanks," I said, shaking his hand perhaps a bit too firmly. I always play to win. We collected our prize, a gift certificate to some chain restaurant, and returned to the crowd. But the brief interaction had crystallized something for me. This wasn't just about Serena's infidelity anymore. It was about Marcus's arrogance, his assumption that he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. That assumption was about to be tested. The party wound down around midnight, couples gathering their coats and saying their goodbyes. Serena was quiet during the drive home, staring out the passenger window at the empty streets of our neighborhood. "Fun party," she said finally. "Very educational," I replied, using the same word I'd chosen earlier. "I learned a lot about people tonight." Such as? Such as how easy it is to misjudge someone, how people can surprise you when you least expect it. I pulled into our driveway, the automatic garage door opening to welcome us home. Makes you wonder what other surprises might be waiting. Serena turned to look at me, her expression unreadable in the dashboard light. "Danny, are you sure you're feeling all right? You've been saying cryptic things all evening." "Have I? I thought I was being pretty direct." "Direct about what?" I could have answered that question, could have laid out everything I'd discovered, demanded explanations, forced the confrontation that was inevitable. But something held me back. Call it instinct, or strategy, or just the need to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. Nothing specific. Just general observations about human nature. We went inside and got ready for bed in the careful choreography of a couple who'd been married long enough to navigate each other's routines without much communication. Serena disappeared into the bathroom while I changed out of my costume, hanging the pirate outfit in our closet next to her Catwoman leather. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd spent the evening dressed as a predator while I'd played the role of a swashbuckling hero. If only real life were that simple. When she emerged from the bathroom, Serena was wearing the silk nightgown I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. She looked beautiful, vulnerable, like the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. For a moment, I almost convinced myself that everything I'd discovered was a misunderstanding, a series of coincidences that my paranoid mind had twisted into something sinister. Then she climbed into bed and immediately turned away from me, claiming exhaustion from the party. I lay awake for hours after her breathing settled into the rhythm of sleep, staring at the ceiling and planning my next moves. By morning, I'd made several decisions. First, I needed more information before taking any action. Accusations without proof would only put Serena on guard and make her more careful about covering her tracks. Second, I needed to understand the timeline of the affair. When had it started? How serious was it? What exactly were they planning for Miami? Third, I needed to protect myself financially and legally. If Serena was planning to leave me, I had to assume she was also planning to take as much as possible with her. The next few days passed in a strange suspension of normalcy. I went to work, managed my restaurant, came home to shared dinners and mundane conversations about household tasks and social obligations. But underneath the routine, I was conducting a careful investigation into my own life. The cell phone records were my starting point. I'd upgraded our plan years ago to include detailed billing, never imagining I'd use it to track my wife's infidelity. But the data was comprehensive: call times, text frequency, even location information when she had GPS enabled. The pattern that emerged was damning. Serena's communication with Marcus had intensified dramatically over the past 3 months, coinciding with what I now realized was the beginning of their physical relationship. But the digital trail went back much further. Sporadic messages dating to last spring, suggesting they'd been building toward this for nearly a year. More disturbing was the location data. Serena's phone showed regular visits to places she'd never mentioned: a motel on the outskirts of town, an apartment complex where Marcus apparently had a friend, even our own home during hours when I was supposed to be at work. That last revelation hit particularly hard. They'd been using our house, our bed, while I was busy earning the money that funded their affair. I started varying my schedule, coming home unexpectedly during lunch breaks or afternoon lulls at the restaurant. The house was always empty, but I began noticing small details that suggested recent occupation: displaced pillows on the couch, coffee cups in the sink when Serena claimed she'd been drinking tea, the faint scent of cologne that wasn't mine. "You're home early," Serena said one Thursday afternoon, emerging from our bedroom with damp hair and a guilty expression. "Slow day at the restaurant," I said, studying her face. "I thought I'd surprise you." "Well, you certainly did that." She moved past me toward the kitchen, not quite meeting my eyes. "I was just taking a shower. I went to the gym this morning and felt gross." The gym. Of course. I'd already confirmed through her location data that she spent far more time at the fitness center than any reasonable workout would require. Now I understood why. "How was your session?" I asked. "Good. Really good. I'm finally seeing some progress with my strength training." She opened the refrigerator, using the door as a barrier between us. "Patricia's been helping me with my form. She's gotten really serious about fitness lately." Patricia, the loyal friend who was enabling this entire deception, probably providing alibis and cover stories while my marriage disintegrated. "That's nice of her," I said. "You two have been spending a lot of time together lately." "We're planning this Miami trip. There's a lot to coordinate." Serena emerged from behind the refrigerator door with a bottle of water, her expression carefully neutral. "Speaking of which, I need to give you some details about the flights and hotel, just in case you need to reach me." "Of course. What hotel did you say you were staying at?" "The Fontainebleau. Patricia found a great package deal online." The lie came easily, practiced and smooth. "I'll text you the confirmation number and our room information." Our room information. Not their room information, not the rooms they'd be staying in. Our room. The slip was small but telling. Serena was thinking like half of a couple, just not the couple she was married to. "Sounds perfect," I said. "I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time." That evening, I waited until Serena was asleep before conducting a more thorough search of our house. I'd never been the suspicious type, never felt the need to check her phone or go through her belongings. But trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. Her laptop was password protected, but I'd watched her type it enough times to guess correctly on the second try. Her email revealed nothing obvious. She was too smart to leave incriminating evidence in easily accessible places. But her browser history told a different story. Searches for Miami restaurants, romantic getaway packages, even articles about how to know if you're ready to leave your marriage. She'd been researching her new life while sitting in our living room, using the internet connection I paid for to plan my abandonment. More disturbing were the travel sites she'd visited. The Fontainebleau reservation wasn't under Patricia's name, as she'd claimed. It wasn't even under Serena's name. According to the confirmation email I found buried in her deleted folder, the room was registered to Marcus Thornton. A suite, not a standard room. Ocean view, king bed, champagne service included. The kind of romantic package designed for couples celebrating special occasions. I sat back in her desk chair, staring at the screen and feeling something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just an affair, it was a full-scale relationship complete with romantic getaways and future planning. Serena hadn't just been unfaithful, she'd been building an entire alternate life. The question was, what to do with this information? Confronting her would only accelerate whatever timeline they'd established. But sitting on it felt like choosing to be a victim. Then I remembered something Marcus had said at the party. What about them? They'll survive. People get divorced every day. His casual dismissal of the collateral damage had revealed something important. He wasn't just stealing my wife, he was destroying his own marriage in the process. Patricia Thornton, the woman who'd been enabling this affair, was also its other victim. Maybe it was time she knew what her husband and best friend were really planning. I found Patricia's contact information in Serena's phone and spent the next hour crafting a text message that would shatter her world as completely as mine had been shattered. But every version felt either too harsh or too subtle, too emotional or too clinical. Finally, I settled on something simple. We need to talk about Miami. Call me when you're alone. I sent the message from a prepaid phone I'd purchased that afternoon. Then waited. The response came within minutes. Who is this? Someone who knows what's really happening November 15th through 17th. A longer pause then. I don't know what you're talking about. I attached a screenshot of the hotel confirmation, the one showing Marcus's name and the romantic suite package. The next response took nearly an hour. Can you meet tomorrow? 2 p.m. Riverside Park, North Parking Lot. I'll be there, I typed back. The next 24 hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. I went through the motions at work, managed staff meetings and supplier negotiations while my mind raced through possible scenarios for the upcoming conversation. Patricia might already know about the affair and be complicit in covering it up. She might be as clueless as I'd been, another victim of her husband's deception, or she might be planning some kind of trap, warning Marcus and Serena that their secret was compromised. But I had to take the risk. Fighting this battle alone felt impossible, and Patricia was the only other person with as much to lose as I did. Riverside Park was nearly empty on a cold November afternoon. Just a few joggers and dog walkers taking advantage of the brief sunshine between storm systems. I arrived early and positioned myself where I could see the parking lot, watching for Patricia's red SUV. She pulled in exactly at 2 o'clock, parking several spaces away from my car. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in her posture as she walked toward the picnic table where I was waiting. "Danny," she said, sitting across from me with careful precision. "I have to say, your text messages were quite alarming." "The truth tends to be alarming," I replied. "The question is whether you want to hear it or keep living in denial." Patricia studied my face, looking for signs of what I knew and how I'd learned it. She was still beautiful at 38, but stress had carved new lines around her eyes, and her usually perfect makeup couldn't quite hide the exhaustion underneath. "What exactly do you think you know?" she asked. Instead of answering, I pulled out my phone and showed her the hotel confirmation. She stared at the screen for a long moment, her expression cycling through surprise, understanding, and something that might have been relief. "How long have you known?" she asked finally. "About a week. How long have you known?" "Months." Her voice was barely above a whisper. I suspected something was wrong, but I didn't want to believe it. Marcus has always been friendly with other women. I told myself this was just more of the same. "But it's not, is it?" She shook her head. "This is different. He's different. More secretive, more distant. And Serena..." She paused, struggling with the words. "Serena's been lying to me about everything. The gym sessions, the girls' nights, even this Miami trip. I thought we were really going together until I saw that confirmation." "So you knew the trip was fake?" "I knew something was wrong with it. Serena kept changing details, avoiding my questions about the itinerary. When I tried to book my own flight, she said the package deal was only for 2 people. Patricia laughed bitterly. I should have realized she meant 2 people. Just not the 2 people I was thinking of. We sat in silence for a moment, 2 betrayed spouses processing the magnitude of our situation. Around us, the park continued its normal rhythm. Children playing on swings, couples walking hand in hand, ordinary people living ordinary lives that hadn't been destroyed by the selfishness of others. "What do we do now?" Patricia asked. "I'm not sure yet, but I know we're stronger together than we are separately." I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. "They're planning to destroy both our marriages. Maybe it's time we planned something of our own." "What kind of something?" "The kind that ensures they don't get to ride off into the sunset while we're left to pick up the pieces." I pulled out a notebook where I'd been tracking my discoveries. "I've been documenting everything: phone records, location data, financial transactions. By the time they get back from Miami, I'll have enough evidence to make their lives very complicated." Patricia's expression shifted, becoming more focused. "What do you need from me?" "Information, access, confirmation of things I suspect but can't prove." I flipped through my notes. "For instance, do you know how long this has been going on?" "Based on the changes in Marcus's behavior, I'd guess 6 months, maybe longer." She paused. "There was a company party last spring where I caught them talking in a corner, standing too close. When I asked Marcus about it later, he got defensive, said I was being paranoid." "That matches what I'm seeing in the phone records. The communication pattern started around then, but really intensified in August." "August?" Patricia's face darkened. "That's when Marcus started working out obsessively, buying new clothes, taking extra care with his appearance. I thought he was having a midlife crisis. He was. He was just having it with my wife." We spent the next hour comparing notes, building a timeline of the affair that was both more extensive and more calculated than either of us had realized. This wasn't a spontaneous attraction that had gotten out of hand. It was a deliberate campaign to build new relationships while maintaining the financial and social benefits of their existing marriages. "They're using us," Patricia said finally, "using our homes, our money, our social connections while they plan their escape. Then maybe it's time they learned that escape isn't as easy as they think." "What are you suggesting?" I closed my notebook and looked at her directly. "I'm suggesting we make sure their Miami weekend becomes very memorable, just not in the way they're expecting." Patricia stared at me for a long moment, then slowly smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Tell me more," she said. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of careful planning and meticulous preparation. Patricia and I met regularly, always in different locations, always with plausible explanations for our whereabouts. To the outside world, we were just 2 friends whose spouses had grown close, nothing unusual about us grabbing coffee or discussing mutual concerns. But behind the facade of casual friendship, we were building something much more sophisticated, a comprehensive strategy to expose the affair in a way that would maximize consequences for Marcus and Serena while minimizing damage to ourselves. "The key is documentation," I explained during one of our meetings at a coffee shop across town. We need irrefutable evidence of what they're doing, when they're doing it, and how long it's been going on. Patricia nodded, taking notes in a small journal she'd started carrying. I've been photographing Marcus's credit card statements. The charges tell quite a story. Hotels, restaurants, even jewelry purchases I never received. Good. I've been tracking Serena's location data and cross-referencing it with her claimed activities. The discrepancies are significant. I showed her my phone, where I'd mapped out several weeks of Serena's actual movements versus her stated whereabouts. She's been lying about almost everything. What about the Miami trip itself? Do we try to stop it? No. We let it happen. I leaned back in my chair, considering the strategy we'd developed. In fact, we encourage it. The more evidence they generate, the better our position becomes. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than confronting our spouses before their romantic getaway, we would allow them to proceed while documenting everything. Patricia had agreed to help by providing alibis and encouragement, playing the role of supportive friend while secretly gathering evidence. Meanwhile, I would use the weekend to conduct a thorough search of our house, Serena's digital accounts, and any other sources of information that might be useful in the inevitable confrontation to follow. There's something else we need to discuss, Patricia said, lowering her voice despite the coffee shop's busy atmosphere. What happens after we expose them? What's our endgame? It was a question I'd been wrestling with since the night of Richard's party. Did I want to save my marriage or end it? Was there any possibility of reconciliation after such an elaborate betrayal, or was I simply gathering ammunition for the divorce proceedings? I honestly don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to fight for what we had, but another part of me realizes that what we had was probably an illusion. I feel the same way about Marcus. The man I married wouldn't have done this, or maybe he would have, and I was just too naive to see it. Patricia stirred her coffee absently, lost in thought. Sometimes I think the hardest part isn't the betrayal itself, it's realizing how blind I've been. We were both quiet for a moment, contemplating the wreckage of our respective marriages. Then Patricia's phone buzzed with a text message. It's Serena, she said, reading the screen. She wants to know if I'm excited about our girls' weekend. What are you going to tell her? Patricia's fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. That I can't wait to see what Miami has in store for us. The response came immediately. It's going to be life-changing. I can feel it. Life-changing, I repeated. She has no idea how right she is. The final week before the Miami trip was a masterclass in sustained deception. Serena threw herself into preparations with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen from her in years. Shopping for new clothes, researching restaurants, even getting her hair and nails done at an expensive salon. You're really going all out for this trip, I observed one evening, watching her model a new dress in our bedroom mirror. I want to look my best. Patricia and I are planning to go out, maybe meet some interesting people. She adjusted the dress's neckline, which was considerably lower than anything she typically wore for girls' nights. You know how it is in Miami? Everyone's so stylish. Interesting people, I repeated. Anyone in particular you're hoping to meet? The question was loaded, and Serena's reflection faltered for just a moment before she recovered her composure. Just new friends, different perspectives. Sometimes you need to get outside your normal social circle to remember who you are. And who are you, Serena? She turned to face me directly, and I saw something in her expression that looked almost like pity. I'm someone who's been sleepwalking through her own life, she said. Someone who's forgotten what it feels like to be desired, appreciated, truly seen by another person. The words were clearly meant to wound, and they succeeded. But they also revealed something important about Serena's mindset. She genuinely believed she was the victim in this situation, a neglected wife finally claiming her right to happiness. I see you, I said quietly. Do you? When's the last time you really looked at me, Danny? Not just glanced up from your phone or your work, but actually saw me. She moved closer, and I caught that unfamiliar perfume again. When's the last time you made me feel like I was the most important thing in your world? It was a fair question, and I didn't have a good answer. The demands of running a restaurant had consumed more and more of my time and energy over the years. I'd been taking Serena for granted, assuming our marriage was stable enough to survive my professional ambitions. But understanding my failures didn't excuse her choices. There were 1,000 ways she could have addressed our problems without destroying everything we'd built together. You're right, I said. I haven't been the husband you deserve, but running away isn't the answer. I'm not running away. I'm running towards something better. She turned back to the mirror, smoothing the dress over her hips. This trip is going to help me figure out what I really want from life. And if what you want doesn't include me, then we'll deal with that when I get back. The casual cruelty of her response took my breath away. She was discussing the potential end of our marriage like it was a minor inconvenience, something to be addressed after her romantic weekend with another man. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said, and meant it. Because what Serena was going to find in Miami was very different from what she was expecting. The night before her departure, I lay awake listening to her pack. She was trying to be quiet, but every zipper and drawer pull seemed amplified in the darkness. At one point, I heard her on the phone, whispering to someone in the bathroom with the door closed. "I can't wait to see you," she said, her voice barely audible through the wall. "Tomorrow night seems like a lifetime away." Tomorrow night. When she'd be in Marcus Thornton's arms in a luxury suite overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, celebrating what she believed was the beginning of her new life. Instead, it would be the beginning of the end of everything she thought she wanted. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp November clarity that made everything seem sharper, more defined. Serena was up early, moving through her final preparations with nervous energy. "Patricia's picking me up at 10, she said, wheeling her suitcase into the living room. "Our flight leaves at noon." "Have a safe trip," I said, kissing her cheek with what I hoped looked like genuine affection. "Call me when you land." "I will." She hesitated, studying my face as if trying to memorize it. "Danny, I want you to know that whatever happens, I did love you. I do love you. This isn't about not loving you." "Then what is it about?" "It's about loving myself enough to want more." She left without looking back, her suitcase bumping down the front steps as Patricia's SUV pulled into our driveway. I watched from the window as they loaded her luggage, two women preparing for what they believed would be a weekend of freedom and possibility. Patricia caught my eye through the window and gave an almost imperceptible nod. The performance was beginning. As soon as they were gone, I began my own preparations. The next 3 days would be crucial, my opportunity to gather evidence, secure assets, and position myself for whatever came next. I started with Serena's home office, methodically searching through files and documents I'd never had reason to examine. Bank statements revealed cash withdrawals I couldn't account for, credit card charges for purchases I'd never seen, even a secret savings account I hadn't known existed. More disturbing was what I found in her desk drawer, a folder labeled Miami, containing printed emails, hotel confirmations, and what appeared to be a detailed itinerary for her romantic getaway. Everything was organized with the precision of someone planning a military operation. But the most damning evidence was a handwritten letter, apparently a draft of something she planned to give me after her return. "Danny, by the time you read this, I'll have made some decisions about our future. I know this will hurt you, and I'm sorry for that. But I can't keep pretending to be happy in a marriage that feels more like a business arrangement than a love story. I've found someone who makes me feel alive again, who sees the woman I really am, instead of just the wife I've been playing. I hope someday you'll understand that this isn't about you not being enough. It's about me needing something different." The letter went on for 2 pages. A carefully constructed justification for betrayal wrapped in therapeutic language about personal growth and authentic living. Reading it Felt like watching someone plan your funeral while you were still alive. I photographed everything, uploading the images to a secure cloud storage account that Serena couldn't access. Then I returned everything to its original position, leaving no trace of my search. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Eagle has landed. Nest is active. Eagle has landed. Serena had arrived in Miami and presumably met up with Marcus. Nest is active. They were together in the hotel suite, beginning their romantic weekend. I texted back, understood, proceeding with Phase 2. Phase 2 involved a more technical investigation. Using software I'd purchased online, I was able to recover deleted files from Serena's laptop, including months of text messages between her and Marcus that painted a disturbing picture of their relationship. The early messages were flirtatious, but relatively innocent. Compliments about workout performance, jokes about their respective spouses, casual observations about life and relationships. But as the months progressed, the tone became increasingly intimate. I can't stop thinking about you, Marcus had written in August. This is dangerous, but I don't care anymore. I know we should stop, Serena had replied, but I've never felt this way before, like I'm finally awake after years of sleepwalking. Your husband doesn't deserve you. Your wife doesn't understand you. We deserve to be happy. We deserve each other. The progression was both predictable and heartbreaking. Two people convincing themselves that their desires justified any amount of deception and betrayal. They'd built an entire mythology around their affair, casting themselves as star-crossed lovers trapped by circumstances beyond their control. But the most revealing messages were the recent ones, where they discussed their plans for the future. After Miami, we'll know for sure, Marcus had written. If this is as real as I think it is, we need to start making changes. I'm ready, Serena had replied. I've been ready for months. I just needed to be sure you felt the same way. I do. I want to build a life with you, Serena. A real life, not this sneaking around nonsense. What about Patricia and Danny? They'll survive. People get divorced every day. It's not the end of the world. There it was again. Marcus's casual dismissal of the collateral damage their happiness would cause. But this time, I had it in writing, permanent evidence of his callous attitude toward the people he was betraying. Saturday passed slowly as I continued my investigation, building a comprehensive file of evidence that would be impossible to deny or explain away. Patricia sent periodic updates from Miami, photos of Serena and Marcus together at restaurants, on the beach, in hotel lobbies. They weren't being particularly careful about public displays of affection, apparently confident that they were far enough from home to avoid detection. That confidence would prove to be a critical mistake. Sunday morning brought the final phase of our plan. While Serena and Marcus were enjoying their last day of romantic bliss, Patricia and I were preparing for their return. The flight lands at 6:30, Patricia texted. Marcus thinks I'm picking him up alone. Perfect. I'll be waiting at home with a few surprises of my own. The surprises included printed copies of all the evidence I'd gathered, a timeline of the affair, financial records showing how much of our money had been spent on their relationship, and a formal separation agreement I'd had an attorney prepare. But the biggest surprise would be Patricia's presence at the airport, where she planned to confront Marcus with her own evidence while Serena watched. The public nature of the confrontation would make it impossible for either of them to deny what had happened or control the narrative. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself oddly calm. The anger and hurt were still there, but they'd been joined by something else, a sense of clarity and purpose I hadn't felt in years. Whatever happened next, I would face it with dignity and strength. My phone rang at 5 o'clock. Serena's number. Hi, honey, she said, her voice bright with artificial cheer. Just wanted to let you know we're about to board our flight home. How was the trip? Amazing. Absolutely life-changing, just like I hoped. There was something different in her voice, a confidence, a satisfaction that made my skin crawl. Patricia and I had the most incredible time. We talked about everything, figured out so much about ourselves and what we want from life. I'm glad it was productive. It was. Very productive. She paused, and I could hear airport announcements in the background. Danny, when I get home, we need to have a serious conversation about our future. I couldn't agree more. Good. I was worried you might not be ready to hear what I have to say. Oh, I'm ready. In fact, I've been preparing for this conversation all weekend. Something in my tone must have registered because her voice became more cautious. Preparing how? You'll see when you get home. Have a safe flight, Serena. I hung up before she could respond, then sent a final text to Patricia. She's coming home ready to talk. I think she's planning to ask for a divorce tonight. Perfect. Marcus is the same. They think they're in control of this situation. They're about to learn otherwise. At 6:45, my phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. Package delivered. Target acquired. Initiating final phase. It was done. Marcus had been confronted at the airport with evidence of his affair in full view of other passengers and airport staff. By now, Serena would know that their secret was out, their carefully planned revelation had been preempted, and their return home would be very different from what they'd anticipated. I sat in our living room, surrounded by the evidence of 12 years of marriage, wedding photos, vacation souvenirs, shared memories that had been reduced to props in someone else's love story. Soon, Serena would walk through that door expecting to find a naive husband ready to be manipulated into accepting his fate. Instead, she would find a man who knew exactly what she'd been doing, exactly what she'd been planning, and exactly how to make sure she didn't get away with it. The sound of a car in the driveway announced her arrival. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and prepared for the most important conversation of my life. The front door opened at 7:15, and I heard Serena's heels clicking across the hardwood entryway. Her footsteps were slower than usual, hesitant, as if she was trying to gauge the atmosphere before committing to her entrance. "Danny?" she called out. "I'm home." "In here," I replied from the living room, where I'd arranged my evidence in neat stacks on the coffee table. She appeared in the doorway still wearing her travel clothes, a designer outfit I now realized had been chosen to impress Marcus rather than for comfort during the flight. Her face was pale, and her usual confidence had been replaced by something that looked like barely controlled panic. "We need to talk," she said, setting down her purse with exaggerated care. "Yes, we do." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Please, sit down." She remained standing, her eyes scanning the papers spread across the table. Even from a distance, she could probably recognize some of the documents, her own handwriting, printouts from her computer, evidence of the life she'd been living behind my back. "What is all this?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. "This is the truth, Serena. Something that's been in short supply around here lately." I picked up the top sheet, a timeline I'd created showing the progression of her affair. "Would you like me to walk you through it, or do you want to start with an explanation of your own?" She moved closer, her face cycling through a series of expressions as she recognized different pieces of evidence. The hotel confirmations, the deleted text messages, the draft letter explaining why she was leaving me. "You went through my things." It wasn't a question. "I investigated my wife's suspicious behavior. There's a difference." "You had no right. I had every right." I stood up, meeting her eyes directly. "You've been lying to me for months, Serena. Using our home, our money, our marriage as a cover while you built a relationship with another man. Don't talk to me about rights." She sank into the chair, finally acknowledging the futility of denial. "How long have you known?" "Since Richard's Halloween party. I overheard you and Patricia talking in the backyard." "That was weeks ago." Her voice was small, defeated. "You've known for weeks and said nothing?" "I wanted to understand what I was dealing with. The scope of the deception, the extent of your plans." I sat back down, maintaining the careful distance between us. "I have to say, I was impressed by the thoroughness of it all. The coordination with Patricia, the elaborate cover stories, even the financial planning. You really thought this through. Danny, please. Please what? Please forgive you? Please pretend this didn't happen? Please make this easy for you? I shook my head. You forfeited the right to easy when you decided to have an affair. Tears started forming in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. These weren't tears of genuine remorse. They were tears of frustration at being caught. I never meant for it to happen this way, she said. Which part? The affair itself, or getting caught before you could control the narrative? The affair. I never meant to fall in love with someone else. But you did. And instead of being honest about it, instead of giving me a chance to fight for our marriage, you chose deception. You chose to make me a fool in my own life. She wiped her eyes, smearing her carefully applied makeup. You don't understand. Our marriage has been over for years. We've been going through the motions, pretending to be happy when we're really just coexisting. So you decided to fix that by having an affair. I decided to fix that by finding someone who actually sees me, who appreciates me, who makes me feel alive again. Her voice gained strength as she shifted into justification mode. Marcus gives me things you never could. Such as passion, excitement, the feeling that I'm the most important thing in his world. She leaned forward, apparently believing she could make me understand. When's the last time you looked at me the way he looks at me? When's the last time you made me feel beautiful, desired, cherished? When's the last time you gave me the chance? I countered. You've been emotionally unavailable for months, Serena. Distant, secretive, always making excuses to be somewhere else. How was I supposed to compete with a fantasy I didn't even know existed? It's not a fantasy. What Marcus and I have is real. What you have is an affair, built on lies, sustained by deception, and funded by money you didn't earn. I picked up the credit card statements showing her secret purchases. Did you think I wouldn't notice the unexplained charges? The cash withdrawals? The new clothes and jewelry that never appeared in our house? She stared at the papers, her face flushing with embarrassment. I was going to pay it back. With what money? You haven't worked in 3 years. I was going to get a job, start over, build something of my own. With Marcus? Yes, with Marcus. We're planning a life together, Danny. A real life, not this hollow shell we've been calling a marriage. The certainty in her voice was staggering. Even caught red-handed, surrounded by evidence of her betrayal, she still believed she was the victim in this situation. Tell me about Miami, I said. What about it? Tell me about your romantic getaway, the suite overlooking the ocean, the champagne service, the weekend you spent playing house with another woman's husband. Her composure cracked slightly. How do you know about... I know everything, Serena. I know about the hotel registration under Marcus's name. I know about the itinerary you planned together. I know about the restaurants where you pretended to be a couple. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of Patricia's photos, Marcus kissing her on a Miami beach. I even know what you wore to dinner Friday night. She stared at the photo, her face going white. Patricia, she was working with you. Patricia was protecting herself, just like I was protecting myself. I put the phone away. Did you really think she wouldn't notice when her husband and best friend disappeared for a romantic weekend together? She said she was okay with it. She said she understood. She lied, just like you've been lying to me for months. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Serena's ragged breathing. She was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of her situation, not just caught in an affair, but caught in a web of deception that had involved multiple people and months of planning. What happens now? She asked finally. That depends on what you want to happen. I want to be with Marcus. I want to start over with someone who loves me the way I deserve to be loved. then you can have that. But you can't have that and keep the life we built together. You can't have your cake and eat it too. I reached for the separation agreement my attorney had prepared. This document outlines the terms of our divorce: asset division, spousal support, the timeline for selling the house. I think you'll find it fair, considering the circumstances. She took the papers with trembling hands, scanning the legal language that would dissolve our marriage. You've already filed? Not yet. I wanted to give you one chance to explain yourself, to show some genuine remorse for what you've done. I studied her face, looking for signs of the woman I'd married. But I can see that's not going to happen. Danny, please, can't we try to work this out? Go to counseling? Figure out how to fix what's broken between us? You can't fix what you've already replaced. You made your choice, Serena. You chose Marcus over me, excitement over stability, fantasy over reality. Now you get to live with that choice. But I love you too. Part of me will always love you. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. If you loved me, you would have talked to me about your unhappiness instead of seeking comfort in another man's bed. I stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. Love isn't just a feeling, Serena. It's a commitment. A choice you make every day to put your partner's well-being above your own desires. You stopped making that choice months ago. She sat in silence for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. But these tears were different. Not the frustrated tears of someone caught in a lie, but the genuine grief of someone finally understanding what they'd lost. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Danny. I never wanted to hurt you like this. But you did hurt me. And more than that, you humiliated me. You made me a stranger in my own life, a supporting character in your love story. I moved toward the door, ready to end this conversation. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. You can use the time to pack whatever you want to take with you. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. You're an adult, Serena. You made adult choices. Now you get to deal with adult consequences. I was almost out of the room when she called my name. Danny? I turned back, hoping against hope that she might finally say something that would make this easier to bear. For what it's worth, you deserved better than this. You deserved a wife who appreciated what she had. Yes, I did. But I also deserved honesty. I deserved the chance to fight for our marriage before you gave up on it. I paused in the doorway. Maybe if you'd given me that chance, things would have turned out differently. Do you think so? Do you think we could have made it work? I considered the question seriously, thinking about all the ways our marriage had slowly deteriorated over the years. The long hours at work, the growing distance between us, the gradual replacement of intimacy with routine. I don't know, I said finally, but I would have liked the opportunity to find out. I left her sitting in our living room, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal and the legal documents that would formalize the end of our marriage. As I packed a bag in our bedroom, I could hear her crying, deep, wrenching sobs that spoke of genuine anguish. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to find some way to bridge the gap between us and salvage what remained of our relationship. But that part was overwhelmed by the larger part that felt nothing but emptiness, where my love for her used to live. The betrayal had been too complete, too calculated, too sustained to forgive. She hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a series of deliberate choices that prioritized her happiness over our marriage, her desires over my dignity, her future over our shared past. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia as I loaded my suitcase into the car. How did it go? As expected. She's chosen Marcus. The divorce will proceed as planned. I'm sorry, Danny. I know this isn't what you wanted. It's what she wanted. I'm just finally accepting that. What about Marcus? Are you ready for Phase 3? Phase 3. The final part of our plan, designed to ensure that Marcus Thornton faced consequences for his role in destroying 2 marriages. Patricia had been gathering evidence of his other affairs. Apparently, Serena wasn't his first conquest among the wives in our social circle. Give me a day or two to process this, then we'll make sure he gets exactly what he deserves. Understood. Take care of yourself. I drove to a hotel across town, checked into a room that felt sterile and anonymous, and sat on the bed staring at my phone. I had dozens of calls to make, lawyers, accountants, friends who would need to hear about the divorce before rumors started spreading. But first, I had one more message to send. I opened a new text to Serena. I hope Marcus is worth it. I hope he gives you everything you think you need, because after what you've done to get him, you're going to need him to be perfect. Good luck with that. I hit send, then turned off my phone and lay back on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to process the end of my marriage. Somewhere across town, Serena was probably calling Marcus, telling him about our conversation, making plans for their new life together. They thought they'd won. They thought love conquered all, that their passion justified any amount of collateral damage. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 days later, I was back in our house, my house now, according to the temporary separation order, packing Serena's remaining belongings when Patricia called with an update that changed everything. Marcus left her, she said without preamble. He came home Sunday night, confessed everything to me, and begged for forgiveness. I stopped folding Serena's clothes, trying to process this unexpected development. He confessed. Everything. The affair, the Miami trip, even the fact that he'd been planning to leave me for her. Patricia's voice carried a bitter satisfaction. Apparently, facing the reality of divorce made him reconsider his priorities. What did you tell him? I told him to pack his bags and get out. I also told him that if he thought one conversation would undo months of betrayal, he was even stupider than I'd given him credit for. I sat down on the bed, surrounded by the remnants of Serena's life in our house. So he's homeless? He's staying with his brother, probably trying to figure out how to explain to everyone why his marriage fell apart right after his romantic getaway with another man's wife. And Serena? That's the interesting part. She's been calling him nonstop since Monday, but he won't take her calls. Apparently, the reality of public exposure and divorce proceedings made their great love story seem less appealing. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, satisfaction that Marcus was facing consequences, pity for Serena's situation, and a strange sense of vindication that their relationship hadn't survived first contact with reality. Where is she now? Staying with her sister in Portland. From what I hear, she's not taking the abandonment well. Patricia paused. Danny, I think she wants to come back, to try to reconcile with you. The possibility had occurred to me. Serena had been calling and texting constantly since our confrontation, alternating between apologies and attempts to explain her behavior. I'd been ignoring most of her communications, but the frequency suggested desperation. It doesn't matter what she wants, I said. She made her choice. Are you sure about that? People make mistakes, Danny. Sometimes marriages can survive infidelity if both parties are willing to work at it. I considered Patricia's words as I continued packing. Could our marriage survive this? Was there any foundation left to build on, or had Serena's betrayal destroyed everything irreparably? She didn't make a mistake, I said finally. She made a series of calculated decisions over a period of months. She planned a new life with another man while lying to my face every day. That's not a mistake. That's a fundamental character flaw. Maybe. Or maybe it's what happens when people feel trapped and don't know how to ask for help. Whose side are you on here, Patricia? I'm on the side of making informed decisions. Marcus destroyed our marriage through selfishness and stupidity, but at least he had the decency to confess when confronted. Serena might have done the same if you'd given her the chance. I did give her the chance. Sunday night, I sat in that living room and waited for her to tell me the truth. Instead, She came home planning to ask for a divorce so she could be with Marcus. She only showed remorse after I proved I already knew everything. Patricia was quiet for a moment. You're right. I'm sorry. I guess I'm just trying to make sense of how everything fell apart so quickly. It didn't fall apart quickly. It fell apart over months of deception and betrayal. We're just seeing the results now. After we hung up, I finished packing Serena's things and arranged for them to be shipped to her sister's house in Portland. Then I walked through the rooms we'd shared, trying to decide what to keep and what to discard from our 12 years together. The wedding photos would go, obviously. Most of the furniture we'd chosen together could stay. I'd need somewhere to sit and sleep in my new life as a divorced man. But the smaller items, the personal touches that had made this house a home, would need to be reconsidered. I was boxing up books when I found the journal Serena had kept during our early marriage. Curious despite myself, I flipped through pages chronicling our first years together, the excitement of being newlyweds, the joy of buying our first house, the dreams we'd shared about our future. Danny surprised me with dinner at that little Italian place where we had our first date, read one entry from 5 years ago. Sometimes I can't believe how lucky I am to have married my best friend. He makes me feel so safe, so loved, so certain that whatever life throws at us, we'll face it together. The contrast between that woman and the one who'd spent the weekend in Miami with Marcus Thornton was staggering. What had happened to transform love into indifference, gratitude into resentment, partnership into betrayal? My phone rang, interrupting my melancholy. Serena's number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up on the fourth ring. Hello, Serena. Danny. Her voice was hoarse, exhausted. Thank you for taking my call. What do you want? I want to come home. I want to fix this, to fix us. She was crying again, but these tears sounded different from the ones she'd shed Sunday night. I made a terrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life. But it's over now, and I want to make things right. It's over because Marcus dumped you, not because you came to your senses. That's not true. I've been thinking about everything you said, about the choices I made and the damage I caused. You were right about all of it. I was selfish and cruel and stupid. Yes, you were. But admitting it doesn't undo it. I know that. But doesn't our history count for something? 12 years of marriage, all the good times we shared, the life we built together. Her voice broke. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. I'm begging for it. I closed the journal and set it aside, trying to imagine what reconciliation would look like. Could I ever trust her again? Could I ever look at her without seeing Marcus Thornton's hands on her body, hearing her voice as she planned to leave me for him? It's too late, Serena. It doesn't have to be. We could go to counseling, take things slowly, rebuild what we had. We can't rebuild what we had because what we had was based on trust. And you destroyed that trust so completely that it can't be repaired. People rebuild trust all the time, after affairs, after betrayals. If they're both committed to the work, I'm not committed to the work. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but they were true. I don't want to spend the next 5 years wondering if you're really at the gym or meeting someone new. I don't want to check your phone and monitor your activities and live in constant fear that you'll decide our marriage is boring again. I would never. You said you'd never cheat on me too. You said you'd never lie to me. You said a lot of things that turned out to be meaningless. I stood up, pacing around the room that no longer felt like ours. I'm filing for divorce, Serena. The papers will be served this week. Danny, please. I love you. I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but I do love you. If you love me, you'll sign the papers without fighting them. You'll let me move on with my life instead of dragging this out and making it more painful than it already is. Is there anything I can say? Anything I can do? I thought about her question seriously, searching for any scenario where we might find our way back to each other, but every path I could imagine led through a minefield of resentment, suspicion, and damaged trust. No, I said finally. There isn't. Then I guess this is goodbye. I guess it is. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. Yes, I did. But I'm going to find it now. After she hung up, I sat in the silence of our empty house and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Relief. The uncertainty was over, the pretense was finished, and I could finally start building a life based on truth instead of illusion. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. How are you holding up? Better than expected. Ready to move forward. Good. Because I have some news that might interest you. Marcus's construction company just lost their biggest contract. Apparently, word got around about his extracurricular activities, and the client decided they didn't want to work with someone of questionable character. I smiled despite everything. The consequences were spreading beyond our immediate circle, affecting Marcus's professional life as well as his personal relationships. Actions had consequences, even when people thought they were being clever about hiding them. What about you? I texted back. How are you handling everything? One day at a time, but I'm filing for divorce too. Some things can't be forgiven even if the cheater comes crawling back. Good for you. We both deserve better. Yes, we do. And we're going to find it. 6 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop downtown, reading a book and enjoying the kind of peaceful Saturday morning I hadn't experienced in years. The divorce had been finalized, the house had been sold, and I'd moved into a smaller place that felt more like home than the suburban monument to marital compromise I'd shared with Serena. I'd heard through mutual friends that she was still in Portland, working as a receptionist at a medical office and trying to rebuild her life. Marcus had moved to another state, apparently deciding that starting over somewhere new was preferable to dealing with the wreckage he'd created in our community. I didn't wish either of them ill, but I didn't wish them well either. They'd made their choices and would live with the consequences, just as I was living with mine. Danny? I looked up to find a woman standing beside my table. Jennifer Martinez, Richard's wife, looking uncertain but hopeful. Jenny, hi, how are you? I'm good, really good actually. She gestured to the empty chair across from me. Mind if I sit? I've been wanting to talk to you for months, but I wasn't sure if you were ready for company. Please sit. I'd welcome the conversation. She settled into the chair, studying my face with the same perceptive attention I remembered from the Halloween party that had started this whole ordeal. You look different, she said. Lighter somehow, like you've been carrying a heavy weight and finally put it down. That's exactly how I feel. It's amazing what happens when you stop pretending everything is fine and start dealing with reality. I heard about the divorce. I'm sorry it came to that, but I'm glad you're doing well. Thank you. It wasn't the outcome I would have chosen, but it was the right one. We talked for an hour, catching up on the changes in both our lives. Jenny and Richard were doing well, their marriage apparently strengthened by witnessing the destruction of others. Several couples in our former social circle had separated or divorced in the wake of the revelations about Marcus and Serena, as if their affair had been a catalyst for others to examine their own relationships. It's like you and Patricia lifted a rock and exposed all the insects underneath, Jenny said. Suddenly everyone was questioning everything, looking for signs they'd been missing. Sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes the appearance of happiness is worse than the reality of problems. As we prepared to leave, Jenny hesitated, then spoke carefully. I know this might be too soon, or inappropriate, or whatever, but there's someone I'd like you to meet. A friend of mine, who's also recently divorced, also trying to figure out what comes next. I considered her offer. 6 months ago, the idea of dating would have seemed impossible, but sitting here in the sunshine, feeling genuinely content for the first time in years, it didn't seem so far-fetched. What's her name? I asked. Sarah. She's a teacher, loves to read, has a great sense of humor about life's absurdities. Jenny smiled. I think you two might have a lot to talk about. Set it up, I said. I'm ready to see what comes next. Walking home that afternoon, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this point. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had also freed me from a marriage that had been slowly falling apart for years. The pain of discovery had been excruciating, but it led to a clarity and peace I might never have found otherwise. Serena had been right about one thing. Our marriage had become a hollow shell, a performance of happiness rather than the real thing. But her solution, deception and betrayal, had been catastrophically wrong. The right solution was honesty, courage, and the willingness to either fix what was broken or acknowledge that it couldn't be repaired. I'd learned to value truth over comfort, dignity over convenience, and genuine connection over familiar routine. Whatever came next in my life would be built on that foundation, and it would be stronger for it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Danny, this is Sarah. Jenny gave me your number and suggested we might enjoy meeting for coffee sometime. If you're interested, I'd love to hear from you." I smiled and typed back, "I'd like that very much. How about tomorrow afternoon?" The response came quickly. "Perfect. I know a great place downtown. Fair warning, I have strong opinions about coffee and even stronger opinions about honesty in relationships." Those sound like excellent qualities. I look forward to meeting someone who values both. As I reached my front door, I realized I was genuinely excited about tomorrow's coffee date. Not because I was looking for someone to fill the void Serena had left, but because I was ready to share the life I'd rebuilt with someone who might appreciate it. The betrayal that had ended my marriage had also taught me what I truly valued in a partner: honesty, loyalty, and the courage to face problems together instead of running away from them. If Sarah possessed those qualities, we might have something worth exploring. And if not, I was content enough in my own company to wait for someone who did. I unlocked my door and stepped into my home, smaller than the house I'd shared with Serena, but infinitely more peaceful. This was a space built on truth rather than illusion, on choices I'd made consciously rather than compromises I'd accepted passively. It was exactly where I belonged, and exactly where I was meant to be. The story of my marriage to Serena was over, but the story of my life was just beginning, and this time I would be the one writing it.